Hi everyone. After one of my recent videos, it was actually my fastest acceleration video. I had a number of comments from people saying about how I come up to the back of queues. Just for example, with this scenario, people were saying that I don't change down. Well, I'm going to go into this today because if you still think you need to change down coming in towards a stop at a set of lights, you're probably about 30 years out of date. Now, it's not just a set of lights where I'm stopping, where I might be doing something similar. It's any scenario. This, for example, is another set of lights. So all you really need to do nowadays is literally come off your gas and use your brake. Make sure you declutch at the correct time, which is about there in third gear. Now I'm going to be talking about this in a little more detail as well, and then I'm going to choose the gear that I'm going to use and then continue. People were saying in the comments that that's coasting. It's not. What coasting is, it's a gear fault when you're not using the gear to actually aid you slow down. But if, say for example, I'm coming up towards this junction up ahead, we've got the roundabout, it's traffic light controlled, and I'm in fourth gear, if the lights were to be on red, and they might be by the time we get there, looking at what they're on now, they're on green, but if they're on red when I get there, I literally don't need any other gear because I'm not using any gear to continue. Fingers crossed they change. How many times have you heard people say that? Even if they don't, I'm only choosing the one gear per junction. So I chose third for that particular sharpness of bend. So I wasn't able to give a demonstration with what we had out in front of us there, but I'm sure I will as we come to the end of this motorway. So I'm going to get on with it, and we'll pick this up again when I get a chance to slow down. The different gears work at different ranges. I'm in sixth at the moment, and the car is nice and comfortable. It's doing exactly 70 miles an hour. And if we have a little look at the rev counter is comfortably sitting in between 1,000 and 2,000 revs, so it's very fuel efficient. I'm staying where I am in this lane to where I want to go a bit further up, rather than people instantly saying I'm being a lane hog. But just have a listen to the sound of the engine and have a little look at the rev counter as I slow down to 50. Will this sixth gear work? Now I'm just going to use a little bit of brake to make sure I am down at 50 before the signs. And if you look at the rev counter now, it's really, really low. So at 50 miles an hour in sixth gear in this car, this isn't going to go much slower. Even a little touch further up, the speed limit drops again. It drops to 40 miles an hour, and there's no way in the world I'm going to be able to stay in sixth. So even now, clutch has got to go down there at that point at 40 miles an hour in sixth gear, because it was going to start struggling and it'll start to stall. What's going to happen if it stalls? Well, it's going to stall quite quickly to a stop, and that's going to be lethal with your slow as you're approaching the queue at the end of the motorway. So it's impossible to use the sixth gear or whatever gear you were in all the way to maybe 2 or 3 car lengths before you come to a stop. And this is it's a common misconception. I think a lot of driving instructors say that you should declutch at a particular distance, and it's just not the case. Although fifth gear will be a little more flexible than sixth, it's still going to struggle. Anything, no in the world I'd ever get anywhere near 30 miles an hour in fifth gear. It just would be unusable. So remember, this is not coasting. What we used to get taught was to go down through the gears as we were approaching the back of a queue. And not many people actually realise the original reason for this. It's because the brakes on the old cars, some of you watching may remember the drum brakes, and they were prone to brake fade. And if you don't know what brake fade is, effectively, simplest terms, it's as the brakes heat up down to use, they lose their efficiency, they don't grip as well, and they don't brake as well. So to stop that from happening, to take the pressure off the brakes, what people used to do is go down through the gears, and that makes sense because you're making use of engine braking, using the actual engine to help slow the car down. But the modern brakes are totally fine. There's no issues to use brakes to do all of your slowing in a modern car. We're not talking about if you're going to take it on track or anything like that, but just under normal conditions, the brakes are fine to use. They're also a lot cheaper to replace than the other components of the car that you're using. You're using the clutch, you're using the gearbox, you're using the engine. Brakes are a lot cheaper, and they're a wearable part, and they're a lot easier to replace as well. So remember this: brakes to slow and gears to go. It was the timing of when to declutch that was causing most of the comments, though, and I sort of get that. I see this from even potential driving instructors who come for training, that they think that if they're in fifth gear approaching a scenario like this, that pressing the clutch down is classed as coasting. It's not. It's a controlled roll. Effectively, what's gone on is you've used perhaps fifth gear for the duration of its effectiveness. So you may be slowing down from 70 miles an hour perhaps all the way down to 35-ish in this car. And then when that gear has lost its effectiveness of actually helping you slow, you literally press the clutch. You don't need any gear coming in. I know some people say that you're getting your gears prepared in case the vehicles in front move off. Well, just use your eyes and anticipate stuff, because you don't need to. If the lights are on red, you're not moving off. So why change gear? There's just no point to it whatsoever. So all you do nowadays is literally keep your hands on the wheel, keep your eyes on the road, and just literally use your brake, listen for when to declutch in your particular car, press the clutch, come to a stop, job's a good one. In first gear, idle speed 5 miles an hour. If you need to go any slower than that, you press the clutch. Second's obviously quicker than that, third's quicker still. But if you think that you can press the clutch at a set distance all the time, you're wrong. It's not going to happen. Each car is also different. This car is a 2-litre diesel engine. It's quite powerful, it's quite torquey. And because of that, to make use of the power and torque in the engine, the manufacturers lengthen the gear ratios. So for example, a second gear in this car will not work as slowly as second gear in maybe a 1-litre petrol engine. So let's have a little look at idle speed in second. Just letting everything go. If you need to go any slower, I can't just press the brake, the clutch has got to go down now. And that's 9 miles an hour. So 9 miles an hour in second gear is the lowest speed that's going to go. So when people were talking to me and saying you should be getting fifth gear down to 10 to 15 miles an hour before you declutch, that's impossible in this car. So let's have a little look at this in a more practical situation now, as we're just heading up this road. What I'd like people to do is have a look at the my rev counter, and in the middle of it I've set my car so we've got the efficiency gauge. Now what I'd like people to do is, when I'm slowing, I'm going to go down through the gears, and I'm also going to just do it in the correct way when I can get 2 examples, and we're going to have a little look at the efficiency and see what actually happens to the efficiency. The bar's effectively back to front, so the lower the bar goes, the more efficient the car is being, and as you can see at the moment it's running 38.9 miles a gallon because I've done nothing but stop start since we've filled up with fuel. So I'm in fifth gear as well. We also will probably get the opportunity here to show you how low that fifth gear can go. So I'm not going to change down through the gears first of all. I'm just going to use the brakes, and I'm going to get fifth gear going as low as it can. There's 33, 32. It's going to stall. I've got to go for the clutch. And you could probably see the rev counter going below idle, and that's meaning that the engine's at a level where it's trying to stall, and the computer in the engine is forcing more fuel and air into the engine to try and stop it from stalling. That's when I did declutch, you could see it jump back up. I hope that was pretty clear. So here, no gear, declutch when I need to, wait till I know what gear I'm going to use, pick it, do it. Okay, the next time I slow down, what I'm going to do is have a little look to see whether there's any difference in the economy of things, because I was concentrating on how low fifth could go, didn't actually mention the economy. So we'll have a little look at both of these scenarios a little touch further up. The first one that I'm going to do is, like I've said, I'll change down through the gears, and we're going to have a little look at the economy. So this time we're approaching a roundabout, and what I'd like you to do is have a little look at the grey bar. When it goes a little lower into the blue, that means it's recharging the actual battery systems as well. So I'm just going to gear down into fourth. Anything happens to it? Nope. Third? Nope. Second? No. So it doesn't use much, if anything, to do the slowing down with the gears. What's that done to benefit? I would have been stopped here anyway. Could have just literally just pressed the brake, declutched and just stopped. So I'll try and do the same approaching the next roundabout. I was able, thankfully, to get another stop in prior to the roundabout. I'm just going to create a little bit of space just so I can actually build some speed and then get up into third and show people what actually happens when I just slow down. Okay, so I'm not going to change down through the gears. I am doing a right turn at the roundabout, so I'm just gently slowing. Declutch, 20 miles an hour, third gear, and have a look again. It only tails off right at the last moment, just as I'm coming to a stop. So when people say that they gear down because it's more fuel efficient, that's not the case. Modern cars, when you're slowing down in gear, use no fuel whatsoever. So are there any benefits to gearing down as you're coming in towards a set of lights that are on red? Well, as far as I'm concerned, no, there's not. Modern vehicles, they work a little differently. The reasoning why we used to do it has disappeared, like I explained with the brakes. So there's no reason to whatsoever. All it does is just put excess wear through the clutch, through the gearbox, into the engine. It doesn't save any fuel. From a teaching perspective as well, what I tend to find is that people are gear orientated. So in other words, they're choosing gears in case things happen, rather than just observing to watch to see when they're happening. And the observations increased and getting better is always going to be a better way of doing it. So from a teaching perspective, there's no benefits. Even if you were doing your Part 2 driving instructor exam, you may even be marked down for unnecessarily changing down through the gears. And this is the stance of the DVSA. I'm not actually sure what happens regarding some of the other motoring organisations. I think IAM are exactly the same. Literally, it's just slow down, choose the appropriate gear and then do it. ROSPA, not sure if you've done any ROSPA courses. Please let me know of their standpoint on this, but effectively it's about 30 years out of date and there's no need to do it. If you do it, it doesn't really matter. The amount of wear that we're talking about with your car and with the gearbox and with the clutch is negligible. Nothing's at high speed and high temperature, so therefore the amount of wear through these components is going to be small. So if you do it, it's not a big deal. But honestly, the way that I've explained, it is a more relaxing way to do your driving. There's less to do on the way in, which allows your observations to be at a high level. Give it a go if you haven't tried it. Might take a little bit of practice, but do it in the safe times, because you're stuck and ingrained in those old habits, don't forget. Keep safe, everyone. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you soon.